Often when I give a homily, I like to tell stories about my sister. And for better or for worse, they often make my sister look kind of bad. So the parishioners at Our Lady of Mercy, I think, are starting to get a little concerned that I don't love my sister. So, parishioners of Our Lady of Mercy, to prove my love for my sister, I decided to take this opportunity to tell a story about my brother-in-law. So, when my sister and my brother-in-law were dating, my brother-in-law thought of himself as something of an athlete. And, he thought he knew a lot about sports, and he thought he was pretty good. Not the best, but he thought he was pretty good. So my sister decided to take him skiing because he had never been before. And so they're getting their skis on, they get up to the lift, and it wasn't the type of ski lift where you'd sit down and it would gently take you up the slopes without any problems. Rather, it was the type where you'd hold on to a cable, and while you're on your skis, it would pull you up the mountain. So my sister gets her skis on, and she holds onto the cable and starts going up the mountain, no problem. A few seconds later, she hears a high-pitched scream from behind her and a tug on the cable, and she turns around and sees my brother-in-law being dragged up the mountain because he couldn't keep his balance. The most embarrassing part about all of this for my brother-in-law is that after skiing, my sister still wanted to marry him. He had to sort of suffer the humiliation of realizing there was more to him that could be loved than those things that he thought made him lovable. His athletics were secondary. In the eyes of my sister, there was something more to him that made him lovable. And how often do we act like my brother-in-law? Not that we clumsily fall down on the ground, though we may do that often too, but that we base our standards of human perfection on things that we've created, right? We create the ruler on which we measure the value of our worth. So often, if you go through the mall and you see Hollister, for example, it's a clothing store, but you'd have no idea that it's a clothing store from the advertisements, because the advertisements are typically a guy not wearing much clothes with a body that looks like it's been a Greek sculpture of the gods. We base so much of our self-worth on human standards, on especially how we look. Young ladies, how much time and energy and money do you put into different cosmetics to make yourselves look a particular way? I know that's one of the benefits of going to an all-girls school. It's just one less thing to worry about. But we create these standards. Not that they're bad standards necessarily, right? It's good to be athletic, it's good to be good-looking, all these different things, but that we limit ourselves to this understanding of our self-worth. We create this ruler on which we measure our value. This is the culture that legalized abortion has created. That when abortion was legalized, what we said as a culture was we determine the value of human life. We determine when human life is worth living. We set the standards. It's a culture that Pope Francis calls a throwaway culture. And in this culture where we determine the standards, the grandma who seemingly has no more use to society or to her family because she's having dementia is hidden away in an institution, or even now is being encouraged to end her life because we've determined that her value is no more. She's served her purpose. It's a throwaway culture. Or the kid who's maybe a little socially awkward is shunned in the cafeteria because he doesn't fit our standards of human perfection. Or obviously the child in the womb that will be an inconvenience because of a human defect, a birth defect, that we think this life no longer has value. Legalized abortion has diminished our value. It's diminished the value of human existence because we have determined when human life has value. Brothers and sisters, what we need is a new vision. What we need is a new vision of our worth in God's eyes. In the second reading, St. Paul told us, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your minds." The renewal of our minds. We need a new way of seeing ourselves. Just as my brother-in-law received a new way of looking at himself because of his relationship with my sister, so we receive a new way of looking at ourselves through our relationship with Jesus Christ. In the gospel today, we have this young man who approaches Jesus with all his standards, with all his riches, all his understanding of human perfection. And Jesus tells him, if you would be perfect, go sell what you have and give to the poor, then come follow me. That if we want to understand what it truly means to be perfect, to see our value in God's eyes, to see our value as it truly is, we have to follow Jesus. We have to follow our Lord. There's a quote by a bishop in the 5th century, St. Peter Chrysologus. He said, "Why, O man, are you so worthless in your own eyes, and yet so precious to God?" That in this culture that we live, we are so undervalued because we set the standards. And what God tells us in Jesus Christ is, you are worthy of my life, God says. You are worthy of me giving up my life. Especially during this year of mercy, Pope Francis is calling us to see our dignity in God's eyes, that nothing can separate us from the love of God. Following Jesus Christ gives us a new, much richer vision of ourselves. I want to close and leave you with one of my favorite quotes. Just full disclosure, I'm a nerd. So, I mean, you didn't have to agree with me so quickly. So I want to quote from Lord of the Rings. And if you're unfamiliar with the story, basically there's these two characters that are sent into the pits of hell, into a land they call the Land of Shadows. And so these two characters are sent on mission into this Land of Shadows, and as they're there, living in this dark land, living in this land of shadowy existence, they begin to lose hope. And one of the characters really begins to despair of his mission. And just as he's on the brink of despair, the author says he looks up and he sees a star twinkle for a while. The beauty of it smote his heart, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end, the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. Brothers and sisters, we live in a land of shadows. What legalized abortion has done to our culture has diminished our existence. We live in a land of shadowy existence where it's hard to get excited about life. And in this land that we are about to go back out into, I bid you to look at Jesus Christ. Look at the star that has descended to the earth in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Look to him who enlightens the darkness of this day, who reveals the infinite worth of each and every human life. Brothers and sisters, we are about to receive the Eucharist. We are about to receive him who reveals our dignity. We are about to receive this light. And just as this light enlightened the darkness of the world through the Blessed Virgin Mary, so you too are called to enlighten the world by receiving Christ into your life and sharing that light with a world of shadows. Let that star that once descended in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary shine through your lives so that everyone who encounters you may know the infinite worth they have in God's eyes. God bless you.